You're listening to the Unwritable Rant podcast with your host, author, and occasional misanthrope, Juliette Miranda. Go to theunwritablerant.com and you can subscribe on iTunes or connect with the show on Facebook and Twitter.
Hey there, y'all. It's Juliette Miranda. Welcome to episode 91 of the Unwritable Rant podcast. It is time to kick things off with a toast, y'all. You know I've got my bourbon in hand, so grab a glass, raise it up, and join me in saying cheers. Bourbon. I have an absolutely amazing glass of forged oak bourbon from the Orphan Barrel collection. There is a lot of legend and lore and controversy surrounding the Orphan Barrel line of bourbons. I'm going to spare you the backstory on where they say this bourbon may have come from, and instead focus on what really matters, the taste. Forged Oak is a rare, aged bourbon. 15 years this bourbon spent in an oak barrel, and it is amazing. The mash bill is 86% corn, 7% barley, 6% rye, and I just gotta say, I am so blown away by how amazing Forged Oak is. Now, with a name like Forged Oak, you can rightfully expect that on the front, you're going to taste a very big, woody, oaky sort of flavor. And it's there all right, but what I love about this bourbon is that it also blends into something of a smoky campfire sort of flavor. And on the back end, you get this amazing blend, very subtle but there, of maple and cocoa. It's always a little bit of a crapshoot with these aged bourbons because you never quite know what all that time in the barrel is going to do. But in this case, the results, outstanding. So I have to say that after hearing my stories about the things that I have done to my guy, several people have taken it upon themselves to, either in jest or quite seriously, reach out to my guy and check on his well-being. They'll say things like, blink if we need to call someone to get you. And we'll both laugh at these wellness checks and think, oh, that's just so silly. Of course my guy is fine. He's my guy. I love him. I would never intentionally hurt him. But after handing my guy a flaming tortilla this morning, I have to wonder if maybe y'all kind of have the right idea. I always mean really well, I do, in these situations. And it's never once been my intention to say, lock my guy in the garage for 5 hours. Everything that I have done to him, inadvertently or otherwise, has mostly stemmed from my desire to be helpful. Like this morning. One of our favorite things to do when we're together is to cook. Most of the time, it is wonderful. He and I operate in amazing synchronicity in the kitchen. We manage to slice and chop and saute in perfect harmony. And today, we were going great. We were making breakfast burritos, and all I wanted to do was put a slight char on a soft flour tortilla. It's something I have done 100 times. Admittedly, it does require a little bit of finesse, but I have, contrary to popular belief, actual professional culinary training, so it really shouldn't have been an issue. I could place the blame for my mistake on the fact that it was early, and I hadn't yet had my morning tea and didn't have caffeine in my system to keep the hamster wheel of my brain fully rolling. Or perhaps I could blame my alarming fuck-up on the fact that just 20 minutes prior I had speedballed my allergy medication. But really, it all comes down to the fact that I am a moron. I took that flour tortilla, grasped it in my kitchen tongs, and rather than quickly running it over a heat source to char it, I instead slapped that sucker down on a blazingly hot burner and let it rest there. Not surprisingly, that sticky flour tortilla immediately singed, coughing up black ashes and bursting into flames as I pull it off the burner. My guy, who was scrambling eggs on my left, caught sight of the flames and immediately yells out, "What the fuck?" And as for me, the gravity of the situation hasn't quite registered in my brain, so I just stood there staring, with the only thing separating me from literal hellfire being the metal kitchen tongs. My guy quickly changes his tone and takes on one of those Soothing, sing-song kind of voices that he would use to coax a feral cat into dropping a bird from its clenches. "Baby, give me the kitchen tongs, please." And I hear that, and it clicks in my brain, and I suddenly realize what it is that I'm holding and toss the tongs and the flaming tortilla straight at my guy, who thankfully is quick on the reflexes and catches it all and drops the mess in the sink where he can douse it with water. Admittedly, the whole situation was remarkably dumb on my part, but nothing to call the authorities over. But then I remember that I very nearly got my guy murdered by our local trash collectors, and I'm kind of thinking that maybe he does need a bit of protection from my intentions, or lack thereof. It all started about a month ago, on a Tuesday night when we discovered that our trash had not been picked up during the day. This in itself wasn't so surprising. Our overworked trash collection team has been known to randomly miss garbage cans. Any given week, at least one person in our neighborhood can be seen swearing and dragging a full can that had been overlooked or ignored back up their driveway in frustration. We just assumed that this happened to be our week. And really, a two-person home doesn't produce that much trash, so an extra week without having it taken away didn't seem like that big of an inconvenience. But when it happened again the following week, our frustration quickly became annoyance. Our trash can was now full to the brim, beginning to smell, and there was no place for us to put it except back in our garage. Now, I attempted to call the company that oversees our neighborhood trash collection, but I was thwarted by their automated phone system. It essentially requires you to enter the full numerical value of pi into the keypad before allowing you to speak with a human being. So after 20 minutes of button pressing and swearing, I disconnected the call and decided we would manage the matter ourselves. By week 3, our trash bin was overflowing. We wheeled the hot mess out to the curb on trash day, where it attracted the attention of every fly in a 20-mile radius. There was no way the garbage men could miss this dumpster disaster. And yet somehow, at the end of the day, the bin still stood there at the foot of the driveway, surrounded by a black cloud of stench and insects. What the fuck were we supposed to do with 3 weeks of moldy, maggot-infested trash? Our neighbors were now traversing through that frog-infested swamp out behind our house, just so that they wouldn't have to cross through the entity of stink emanating from our garage. At night, we could see dozens of tiny, beady eyes peering in at us through the slats of our garage door, their greedy little paws itching to get at the overripe delights in our garbage bin. Now, y'all have heard me joke about my guy and I being the hillbillies of our neighborhood. You know, what with us spending so much time barefoot and boozing on the driveway. But now, it was official. The only thing missing was a broken toilet to decorate our doorstep. My solution was to wait until after midnight, throw on our darkest clothing, and grab the stinkiest bags to divvy up among the bins our neighbors had stored outside of their garage. My guy was having none of that. Becoming a Robin Hood of dumpster diving was just too much for him to take, and instead he decided he was going to confront the garbage men himself. That next Tuesday, he dragged all of our trash back out to the curb and nanny-cammed the shit out of our driveway. This trash battle had become personal, and he wanted solid evidence that the rotten, stinking garbage men were deliberately skipping over our house. So he camouflages himself at the back of the garage all morning long, hiding behind boxes and eyeballing the video monitors in heated anticipation. Around noon, he heard the rumble of the garbage truck and steeled himself for confrontation. The garbage men went about their job just like any other day, grabbing cans, tossing trash, and my guy watched it all, hunched over his surveillance setup and ready to pounce. The garbage men approached our driveway, and on video, my guy actually catches the guy looking at our stinking, towering bin of trash, checking out our house number, and then instructing the truck to drive on. Oh, that did it. My guy yells out, "Son of a bitch, I caught them!" And he bolts from the garage, down the driveway, and out into the street where he chases after the vehicle like a dog on a meat wagon. Now, my guy relayed this entire story to me after it happened. You see, that particular day, I had to be on set for a gig, so I missed all of the action. And it is right at this juncture where his tone changes entirely. I didn't notice it at first, and in my excitement at finally having a resolution to our trash problem, I ask, "Did you confront the garbage men?" And he looks at me and he says, "Yes, light of my life, I certainly did." "And did you tell them you caught them on video?" My normally handsome man's features shifted somewhat, contorting into a grimace, and he starts inching closer to me as he relates the rest of his tale. It would seem that my guy most certainly did confront those garbage men, and rather furiously. So much so that one of the guys hopped off the truck and began yelling right back at my guy. The two violently hurled insults at each other for several minutes, causing all of the neighbors to poke their heads out their front doors in the hopes of catching some sort of fist fight. And then my guy looks at me, and he asks, "Do you want to know why our trash hasn't been collected for the past 30 days, my sweetheart?" Well, now, with that tone, not so much, really. In fact, I was kind of starting to think that maybe we should just drop the whole conversation entirely. But my guy was on a roll, and he had a punchline to deliver, and he says, "Our garbage has been terrorizing the neighborhood and luring every rat out of the fucking woodwork this whole goddamn month because someone," and with the word someone, he stares at me good, long, and hard, "someone didn't pay the garbage bill last quarter." Well, y'all, I'll tell ya. It took me several hours to navigate the trash company's phone system to resolve our bill, and another 2 days to haul all of our excess trash to the local landfill. And yet still, the scent of my idiocy lingers. Should you ever hear my guy call out or see a lot of suspicious blinking on his part, do me a favor and help him out. He's been through a lot with me. And with that, I am raising up my glass and once again saying, "Baby, I didn't mean it, I swear." Bourbon. I think I'm going to start spiking my guy's coffee with this in the mornings. Having shared that crazy little adventure of ours, I feel compelled to point out that there are people out there even wackier than I am, and considerably more dangerous. Trust me, I know. I've dated them. And one specific girl comes to mind. I'll call her Danger Zone. It's time for a little bit of a confession here, y'all. I just feel the need to point out and clarify that in my 20s, while I was living in Los Angeles, I dated both men and women. Danger Zone and I had met at a friend's party and dated on and off for about a year. She and I were never at all faithful to each other, which we were always completely upfront about, but for the most part, she and I had a great time together. Until I got laid off. It was my 5th layoff in as many years, and it hit me hard. I spiraled into a wild depression that I numbed with a whole lot of whiskey and musicians. To be blunt, I became an asshole. But I was a self-aware asshole at the very least, and I knew enough that I didn't want to drag Danger Zone any deeper into my pit of depressed depravity. So one night, I went over to her apartment, and I ended our relationship. She appeared to take it well, and spent most of the time nodding her head and gripping the bottle of pink lemonade Snapple that always seemed to be in her hand. She loved that stuff, so much so that I actually bought her a case of it for her birthday the previous month. There were always bottles of it in her fridge, and more often than not, she had a bottle of it in her purse, usually a half-and-half mix of Snapple and vodka. I watched her pick at the label on the bottle while I tried to explain the shit show my life had become, and felt a little bit bad about what I was doing. I knew it was the right thing to do, but that didn't really make it any easier. So I was completely relieved when she gave me a hug and showed me the door. It was the least traumatic breakup I had ever experienced for all of 2 days. Because that's apparently how long it took her to process what I had done to her, and likely how long it took her to draft the 7-page email that arrived in my inbox one morning. It read like something Hunter S. Thompson would knock out on a bender, all stream of consciousness nonsense and devoid of any punctuation. At the start of it, I was a bitch, but by the end, I was a lost soul who just needed to learn that the true key to happiness was putting other people's needs ahead of my own. Somewhere in the middle, she referenced a pet guinea pig and signed the note with love. I had never received an email quite like that before, so I quickly forwarded it to several of my male friends for analysis. They each responded in exactly the same way. Run. I didn't have a whole lot of experience dating women, but that really seemed to me to be something of an extreme reaction. Call me naive, but I just figured that Danger Zone was feeling hurt and trying to rationalize the whole breakup the only way she knew how. So I didn't run. At least not then. I went about my jobless life as usual, never once considering that Danger Zone was hovering at the outskirts of it. In fact, I mostly forgot about her existence, preferring instead to alternate between plastering the town with my resume and getting my Bukowski on at the local dive bar. Now, at the time, I was renting one of those appalling dingbats in the valley, a 2-story walk-up not too far off Ventura Boulevard near Laurel Canyon. The back security gate rarely locked, which essentially guaranteed that anyone could appear on my doorstep at any time, day or night. The UPS guy, the actor who slept in a bed of headshots in his car, and of course, Danger Zone. I had recently sucked up my pride and gotten a part-time job at a local grocery store, and I was just returning home after 5 hours of wrangling shopping carts across an endless steaming parking lot. It was a horrible job, one that 3 days in I was already contemplating quitting in favor of anything else, when I spotted something. There, sitting on my doorstep, was a pumpkin. It hadn't been carved, and there was no note, just a solitary, medium-sized pumpkin, waiting for me a couple of days before Halloween. Really, anybody could have put it there. The well-intentioned lady who lived below me. Or I thought in a more whimsical moment that maybe it was a romantic gesture from one of the guys that I was seeing. Deep down, though, I knew where it came from. Still, it seemed, on the surface, such a harmless thing. It was a pumpkin, not a severed head. What harm could come from bringing it into the house? 2 days later, a small potted cactus turned up on my doorstep, though it wasn't me who found it. It was discovered by the guy leaving my apartment. Oddly, the usual light above my door was, for the first time since I moved in, not on that night. And as the guy walked out, he tripped over the cactus, sending it sailing down the stairs and very nearly following it himself. Needless to say, I did not see him again, and my guard was up. What do you know, that Friday, a bag of groceries magically appeared on my doorstep. This time there was no doubt about where it came from, because there at the bottom of the bag, beneath the granola bars, the tuna fish cans, and the boxes of pasta, was a telltale bottle of pink lemonade Snapple. I looked over my shoulder, wondering if Danger Zone was hidden somewhere watching me. Her timing was remarkable and unfortunate. Because although I found that bag of groceries completely terrifying, pure primal hunger overrode all of my better instincts. That week, I had been subsiding on handouts at work and a batch of chili I was trying to stretch out until payday. It had been months since I had had that much food to myself, and the thought of it was more intoxicating than any bottle of booze I could ever drink. She knew I was going to accept that food. Hell, I knew I was going to take it the second I saw the overflowing bag. And I knew that soon, I'd have to pay for it. I started to dread my doorstep every day after that. I'd be leaving my house in the morning or coming home in the afternoon, and every so often I would find a new offering there. Sometimes it was something relatively innocuous, like a magazine article about resume writing. Other times it was something a little more odd and discomforting, like a Smurfs coloring book with all the Smurfette characters colored pink. My friends encouraged me to move. They wanted me out of there. But I barely had the money to stay. The police just laughed me right out of their station when I tried to tell them what was going on. They didn't care. To them, it just seemed like one sexy adventure. Finally, I went to my apartment manager, a large woman who lived in the building and filed her leasing papers under a giant pile of worn underwear. She just rolled her eyes when I asked for the security door to be fixed. It was one of 100 things that needed to be repaired in that shit box of an apartment complex, and that was the least of her priorities. That left me to fend for myself. Nothing that Danger Zone had left for me was exactly threatening, just unnerving. She had never come off as anything but your typical wacky 20-something chick when she and I were dating, so I thought, absurdly, that maybe I could reason with her. Email seemed like the safest route, so one night I sent her a note. It was short and direct, stating that I was not interested in her or her little gifts, and I politely asked that she leave me alone. So the next door, when I had to leave for work, I just barely inched that thing open and peeked through the crack, expecting to find the worst. But there was nothing there. 5 hours later after work, nothing on the doorstep. Relief washed over me, and I hoped that maybe my whole ordeal was over. What I had conveniently forgotten was that Danger Zone's crazy had something of a 2-day lag time. So right on cue, the next day, I come home from work, and I see Danger Zone herself camped out on my doorstep, nonchalantly sipping from a bottle of pink lemonade Snapple. "We need to talk," she says. I stood at the base of the stairs leading to my apartment, and I stared back at her. She was wearing cut-off jean shorts, platform sandals, and a cropped KNAC tank top that I hadn't realized she'd stolen from me. Her hair had gotten longer and hung in wild waves across her face. I had to admit, crazy kind of suited her. But she stood up then and started to lecture me, punctuating each point by taking steps down the stairs toward me. "Your selfishness is going to ruin your life." Step. "You use people and run away." Step. "When are you going to realize what matters?" Another step. When she reached the bottom step, Danger Zone paused then, finished the last of her pink lemonade Snapple, and snapped. "You have to let others into your heart, Juliette." And with that, she smashed the empty Snapple bottle on the ground, grabbed one of the longest shards of glass, and lunged at me. I was terrified. Thankfully, my sneakers were no match for her platform sandals, and I was able to maneuver past her and run toward the pool. She recovered quickly and ran after me, shrieking, and starts chasing me around the pool. We circle it twice, and are about to circle it a third time when 2 guys run out of a downstairs apartment and knock Danger Zone down onto the ground. Someone behind me yells that they're calling the cops, and I'm thinking, thank God I'm saved. Well, Danger Zone is down on the ground screaming for somebody to help her up, and one of the guys goes and reaches for her. But she bites his hand like a rabid dog and instead just takes off running, past us and out the back door, which, if you will recall, wasn't locked. I filed a report with the police that day and included a nasty "I told you so" postscript, but nothing ever came of it. I never saw or heard from Danger Zone again. It's been almost 20 years since that incident. Obviously, my life is way different now. I'm married to my guy. We live in the Midwest. Still, every time I see a pink lemonade Snapple bottle, I can't help but look over my shoulder. And with that, I am grabbing my glass of bourbon, raising it up, and toasting to crazy love. Oh, y'all, I just gotta say, this forged oak bourbon is so tasty. Well, thank y'all for listening to the Unwritable Rant podcast today. If you are a regular listener and you dig the podcast, I have some fun news. We have t-shirts. Really, y'all, I'm not trying to hook any of you into buying a t-shirt, but if you are so inclined, you can find a link for them on the website. there are stickers too. And believe me, I'm going to get a bunch of them and I am going to plaster my town with them. Don't forget, if you want to find yourself another good podcast to listen to, just check out the Podern Family on Twitter. It's a whole collection of great podcasts about every topic you can imagine. As for me, I'm going to finish off my bourbon, head on outside, and see what kind of trouble I can find. I'll be back to chat with y'all again next week. Cheers, y'all.
Go to theunwritablерant.com and sign up to get early access to interviews and new videos. You can hear new episodes of The Unwritable Rant on radiovegas.rocks every Tuesday at 4 p.m. Eastern and on IPMNation.com on Saturdays and Sundays at 6 p.m. Eastern, and hear best of episodes every weekday at 3 p.m. Eastern. And don't forget to connect with Juliette on Twitter at Morning Neurosis.
Girl, you was pretty as a Sunday morning, standing on the corner at Carondelet. What you say we make our way up to Bourbon, couple hurricanes and a hand grenade, and get blown away. Let the chips fall where they may. If it's all the same, what you say, bon ton relay. Hey, pretty mama, I can smell the gumbo. Sweet as taste of honeysuckle on my lips. Good God Almighty, I can hear the trombone. Every heart ought to beat to a rhythm like this. Come a little closer, honey, let me hold you. Nothing tastes better than a bourbon kiss. You can be the flower on my magnolia. Every heart ought to beat to a rhythm like this.